Hello, and welcome to the Hello You Show, where we talk about big dreams and taking real action. Through transformative stories, a bit of neuroscience, and real conversations, this show is here to help you explore creating your next level life with authenticity and passion. I'm Jessica Rice, a design techie and former engineering leader turned vision evolution coach on a mission to help other women rise up and lead a life of purpose. So get cozy and say hello again to the real you. Hello, welcome back to the Hello You Show. My name is Jessica Rice, and I am so happy to join you today, where we are going to be talking about quiet leadership, how quiet leaders can really make a bold impact, and really understanding our silent strength. And so this topic is really near and dear to my heart because when I was rising up in my own leadership, I initially didn't look at myself as a leader because I was so focused on my own introversion and not knowing how that aligned with the types of leaders that I was accustomed to seeing. And I think that, whether you're a quiet leader, or I think women oftentimes feel this way too. So even if you don't think of yourself as a complete introvert, but you're also questioning if you're the type of leader who is ready to take on more responsibility, then this episode is for you. And so oftentimes we start to think of a quiet leader as someone who might be passive or unable to lead large teams or to make decisive action or to be able to speak to larger groups of people. And while that might be a struggle sometimes that we have to overcome, it's certainly possible and doable. And what it really means is that we have these inner traits and inner qualities built into our personality that makes us uniquely qualified for the type of leadership that we are more often needing and seeing in today's climate. Leaders who are continually working on emotional intelligence, well, we'll often find that already within quiet leaders or thoughtful leaders. And so I want to give you some perspective around that because quiet leadership is not being a pushover. Quiet leadership or thoughtful leadership doesn't mean that we don't care. It simply means that we are more reserved in how our approach might be to solving problems, thinking through solutions, and jumping to conclusions. And so I wanted to bring up a number of quiet leaders who made a huge impact in history. A couple to name are Rosa Parks, Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Barack Obama, J.K. Rowling, Mahatma Gandhi, Eleanor Roosevelt, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and more. Not all leaders, not all successful executives, not people who have made an indelible mark on history are all loud and boisterous and demand our attention. In fact, oftentimes they are working behind the scenes. And so I really want to emphasize that quiet leadership, if we're wanting to really rise up in our leadership and continue to move forward, because you might already be a leader leading teams, but now you're looking, how do I move into the executive level? How do I go forward on my ideas into thought leadership or founding an organization or doing different types of work within the community? Is that we have to lean into our natural strengths, not the ones that we don't have. It doesn't make any sense to try to develop qualities and skill sets and personality traits that aren't inherent within us already. So if we're looking at what our natural strengths are and what it is that we already bring to the table, now we have a really amazing group of things that we can work with and that we can continue to refine and hone. I know when I was working and rising up in leadership and having to have conversations with various executives within the C-suite and being a part of strategic planning and making decisions, I had to find ways that I could shine as a quiet leader, as someone who really wasn't boisterous in an environment that was quite the opposite. And so I had to figure out, okay, what are some things that I am really good at? continue to refine those skills and qualities. And then what could I do to seek out continual improvement? And one of the things that gave me a lot of fear at that time was public speaking. Even though I had been asked to public speak at my local university, I was speaking to new graduates, upcoming graduates. I would sit on panels, but inside I was continuously nervous. And that would show up, at least in the beginning of my career, very prominently when I even had to speak up in small meetings or express my opinions and ideas. And so, like anything else, sometimes it's not about whether or not we are uniquely qualified to speak in large settings. It's just developing a muscle that we haven't fully honed yet. And so what I did is I reached out and I joined a Toastmasters group, and I forced myself to start to learn how I spoke and to speak to different people on different varying topics every single week. And also be able to listen to their topics and speeches and provide constructive feedback. And so that was an invaluable experience for me that helped me to get over some of my fears. And I'm still working on it. We are never perfect. We are always a work in progress. And so what is it for you that you feel like holds you back from stepping out and moving forward in your leadership in a greater way? And if you're leaning into those natural qualities and strengths, then is it just a matter of honing certain muscles, of getting more familiar, more comfortable in certain settings, and still being yourself? So really leverage your ability to influence and develop rapport, because as quiet leaders, typically you are great at communication. You are great at listening. You are very analytical, usually in your thinking, but you also have this ability to think and ponder in a different way because you're not worried about having to be the loudest or having to get your voice heard or all of these other things. That's less dominant for you. And so ask yourself, what is it that I bring to the table? What's the gap that I fill? Where do I add value? Versus looking at all of the things that you don't do well. Look at all of the things that you do well and how you contribute to your organization, to your team, to the ideas and innovation that's coming out of your organization in a greater way. Oftentimes, soft-spoken leaders are great communicators. They have an ability to listen and understand and relay back the information in a meaningful way. 20% of our conversations are understood, while the rest of it usually gets lost, right? And so we can all be a part of the same conversation and walk away with a different idea of how that conversation went, which is why I oftentimes work with leaders on different strategies and tools that they can use amongst their teams to come to a consensus, to come to, back to square one or a root understanding of what the direction is and the strategic plan for the organization moving forward. Because when we're all thinking in our own context, we're missing some of the larger point. But if we're quiet leaders, sometimes we have this ability to think about it from different contexts and a little bit more thoughtfully, because we're not only thinking about it from our perspective, but we're trying to understand and distill down what is it that's truly being said. So according to the Big Five Personality Index, and through Principles U, they have a definition, which I often use with clients. A quiet leader focuses on leading themselves and others through their open-mindedness and equanimity in facing challenges, often leading as much through taking in as putting out. They tend to be more reserved, reflective, determined, and humble, and composed under pressure, while also being inspiring and demanding. Now, if this is sounding like you, then I really want you to take note, because inside of you are some amazing qualities and gifts that we could leverage within the industry in a greater way, and really building up our teams and how we can develop innovation and through creativity for moving forward. Other facets that might surprise you with this quiet leadership as a top archetype, a top trait, is that they're also feisty. They're critical, they can be direct, they can be even-keeled, poised, they're adaptable, evolving, systematic, impartial. Which of these words surprises you? Is it feisty? They can also be incredibly autonomous. They're independent, internally motivated and self-accountable. They're determined, persistent, achievement-driven, motivated, proactive, as well as receptive to criticism. Quiet leaders spend time on strategic outcomes, and they're constantly thinking about how can we improve this area of business? How can we improve this particular process? How can we move the needle forward on efficiency? So strategic thinking, developing trust, empowering teams, mentoring, listening, taking initiative. These are all qualities of quiet leaders. Now, when I said these words, would you have thought of a quiet leader or would you have thought of leadership in general? Oftentimes when I'm working with executives who are, at the tops of their organizations, and I have runs the gamut between quiet leaders to very extroverted leaders and everywhere in between. Everybody has different things that they're working on. But it's so funny how we all have this one fantastic, mythical idea of what a true leader is or looks like or how they behave. And sometimes we forget that the leader who leads from behind has the greatest ability to create impact. So what are some strategies for quiet leaders to really step into their power? Number one, introverts, oftentimes aren't rising to higher levels of leadership because either they don't feel that they possess, the leadership skills that executives have, or maybe the organization isn't seeing them because they're so busy being quiet. They're not visible. And so what are some ways that you as a quiet leader could start to step out in a greater way where you're increasing your visibility, but you're doing it in a very thoughtful, very deliberate, and very meaningful way? And so one of the things is really, again, go focus on the outcomes. Organizational psychologist Adam Grant, who was a part of Principles U as well, emphasizes that introverts are more likely to empower employees and focus on strategy than purely relying on charisma. What does that mean? That means they can back up what they say. They're focused on actual solutions, not only just fluff. It's great to be inspired and to have a charismatic leader, but can we back up some of the statements with data, with processes, with actual tangible results? And so really thinking about that as a quiet leader might change your perspective. Also, be mindful of your energy. Extroversion is about energy, whether it fills your cup or drains it. And what we really truly measure when we're looking at personality assessments and traits is what degrees or what level of extroversion an individual may be on. But this idea or this concept of introversion came up as a way to label what it is that we feel. And so when you are more introverted, you are naturally going to be drained if you are surrounded by loud personalities or large groups. And this might be required in your job. And so you need to find ways that you can then refuel and network strategically. That might be through more private conversations, more one-on-ones, more close connections, as opposed to maybe large networking events or large parties or large groups. So really think strategically about how you can be visible in a way that is a natural fit for you and be cognizant of your energy. Because when we're drained, we are not able to operate at our best. And so really finding time, quiet moments of time where you can then refuel so that you then can go out and do your job as you need to do and then go back and recharge. Find your deep thinking space. We all need deep thinking time. We all need it. And Bill Gates was the master of this because he would go and he would take an entire month sometimes and go and use that as his deep thinking time. No disruptions, no, just completely off grid. So what can we take away from that? Here's a brilliant person who used their time very wisely. And sometimes we always have this idea that we don't have enough time. And therefore, we feel scattered. We're not able to innovate or think creatively in the way that we're needing to. And so, find the time, find moments that you can block off or deep thinking. What can you allocate for yourself in hours that you think the best? Are you more of a morning thinker or a night thinker or a day thinker? When does your brain activate? Also, what works within your schedule? What can you consistently create within your schedule that enables your brain to be ready and prepared for that deep thinking? And can you protect it? Can you protect it as if your life depended on it? Because that is the magic. When you can find that solid hour even of just no disruptions, no emails, no notifications, and just focused work, you will give your gift, and this is true for anybody, you will give your brain and your mind the gift of really being able to just think. And sometimes we don't get that in today's age. And own it. I want you to own your quiet leadership. I want you to own your introversion. I want you to own it like it is the coolest, most amazing gift that you have to give to this planet. Because leadership is not about fitting in, but finding out how you, again, bridge the gap. The issues that we find in organizations that have the same types of leaders all at the top is that they continue to make the same types of decisions. They analyze problems in the same ways, and they never challenge each other's assumptions because they're all thinking in the same ways. And so be the disruptor, be bold and be quiet and be the change maker that can then come in and ask those thoughtful and meaningful questions that gets us to step back and ponder and go, maybe we do need to consider this. So if you're an organization who is looking to grow your leadership, grow your teams, and lead in a more innovative way into the future, I want you to really consider what types of individuals you have within your organization who might not be seen, that you may not notice because things are just getting done behind the scenes and you don't have to think about it. Pay close attention to those individuals who are contributing to innovative ideas and moving the organization forward. They may not seem as loud or as boisterous or getting your attention as easily. And so then we as leaders in an organization have to be mindful to step back and really look deeply at the hierarchy, what's happening internally, what's being said and what's not being said, and what's really getting done. Quiet leaders are also not pushovers. There's this real big idea that if you're quiet, you're timid, and you're afraid. Quiet leaders, when they're passionate about what it is that they do, they don't feel the need to be loud, but they will be very passionate and they will defend a really good idea and not just allow it to die. And so they can be very dynamic, productive, and people-driven. They demonstrate heightened levels of emotional intelligence and closer connections amongst certain members of their teams. Quiet leaders are strategic. They can see the big picture. They develop systems and processes, and they efficiently move things forward. They also tend to avoid conflict. And while it's necessary to be able to handle conflict, they don't tend to cause it. And that's incredibly important, which means that their approach to handling it, given the right level of authority, will be thoughtful and respectful and enable a repair among the team. And they also don't make excuses. They're not afraid to be vulnerable when necessary. Again, quiet leaders, thoughtful leaders, they're connectors. They set a really high standard for themselves. They have high integrity, high accountability, and that is what reigns supreme for them, which then raises the bar for the rest of the organization. In Clay Scoggins' book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, or leveraging your influence when you lack authority, he points out that even when we don't hold formal positions, we are still and can be leaders of change, developing influence. And so quiet leaders are uniquely positioned to be the dark horse, as they tend to have the greatest levels of introspection and self-awareness. They focus on leading themselves before taking charge of others. They are not driven by the need to control. And so influence through building rapport, communication, establishing trust, these are all key traits that make quiet leaders excellent candidates for leadership positions and continuing to rise up within the organization, because they can bring the balance to how things are being decided and projects and planning and strategic initiatives. And they are continually driving change. They get behind excellence and they take personal responsibility of ownership for their work. And so if you are in charge and you are looking to really cultivate an organization that emphasizes the team and individuals and DEI and emotional intelligence and psychological safety and all of the things that organizations need in today's climate, then really pay attention to who are some of those thoughtful leaders. They may not be the loudest in the room, but who always consistently drive excellence, provide ideas, and behind the scenes create possibility and change and just keep things flowing within your organization. Those might be the people that you need to look out for and take note of for those next promotions. Really encourage and embrace quiet leadership, thoughtful leadership. This is the way forward. This is what we need more so in our future than ever before. We don't need grandstanding and standing on soapboxes and telling wild stories. What we need are people who can help others to rise up and be empowered and develop and cultivate trust and recommission within teams who their stakeholders are, who they serve, how they can be of greater value. It's so important and it's so passionate for me to talk about this, because this is what I see when I'm working with executive clients. This is what I recognized when I was rising up in my own career. This greater need to really be deliberate and thoughtful and strategic with the way that we move forward in business, and the right people in the right positions can make all the difference. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know, do you resonate with this message? Do you feel like you're a quiet leader? And if you're not a quiet leader, what do you feel like you could take away that might be beneficial, even if you're wondering what types of things can you do to increase your influence, rapport, and connectivity with your team? Let me know. Respond to the poll that's also going to be within Spotify. Uniquely within Spotify, every week we have a poll and we have a question that you can participate in. So if you haven't done so, go on over to Spotify and be a part of that. And let me know if you're watching this elsewhere. Let me know in the comments what types of things come up for you when you're thinking about how you can rise up, owning your quiet leadership, your introversion, your thoughtfulness in your career. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to the Hello You Show. It's been a pleasure to have you with us on this journey today. If you found value in our conversation and want to support the show, please take a moment to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd also deeply appreciate it if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also enables others seeking inspiration and authenticity to discover our community. Until next time, keep embracing your story with purpose.